All right, that's fair.
I mean, like I could sing you a song about, I don't know, doodle poodles.
I think we're live talking about what we can and can't sing. So
I didn't want to tell you that we were live and just,
go ahead and get started unless Des is going to sing us some Dolly Parton. All right. So before we get going into everything, we should probably talk about our rating. We're rated R for language, terror, and some disturbing images. Get ready. All of that is bound to happen. Excited to see everyone here for the language and terror and disturbing images. So really, really excited today. We have, as usual, I'm excited. Yes. Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay. Whew. All right. I'm excited as usual because we have a guest that I'm excited for. So I'll do some introductions. We'll let her introduce herself, and then we're going to jump in. We have some cool shit to talk about as usual. And of course, lots of beefs. It's always beefy here on suicide and stuff. I am Jess. I use she and her pronouns, and I love to talk about suicide. I'm a mad queer feminist witch and healer, and I work as the director of program development at Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners in so-called Denver, which is land stolen from the Arapaho, Cheyenne, Ute, and Sioux people. I have my career creating pathways to intersectional justice-based emotional support for marginalized folks, and really believe in things like mutual aid and disability justice and abolition as a part of suicide prevention. Really into talking about capitalism and ethics at the moment, and always epistemology. So that's me. Des, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Des. No, I don't. Therapeutic.
That's Boo.
Boo is our therapeutic for the evening. I'm Des. I do stuff. I run Live Through This, which is a series of portraits and true stories of suicide attempt survivors across the United States. And also I do other stuff, most of which is like complaining on various platforms, just like a lot of complaining. Also, I'm an MSW student, and that makes me mad a lot. And then there's more complaining. That's what I've got.
We get upset about every interaction we have with any of the fill-in-the-blank industrial complexes, including education, especially higher ed, but all of it, really. So, yeah. All right, Alyse, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Alyse. I do several different things, all somehow relate to mental health, suicide prevention, and stuff. I do illustration and graphic design. I'm also an art therapist and a pre-licensed counselor. I work at a group practice, so I work with individuals and some couples. And I'm a person with lived experience, so that is my main way that I got involved in this work. What else do I do? That's pretty much it. I have an online shop and an Instagram page where I post the things that I make, and I kind of put all of that into one. And all of the things I do incorporate all of those aspects of me.
And now you're like pretty internet famous.
Oh yeah, you're really internet famous, huh?
Oh yeah, isn't there a TikTok? There's a TikTok too.
Yeah.
Yes, I do have a TikTok. I often forget to post on it, and then I'll do my makeup and stuff, and then just make a bunch of videos. I just like it. So I'm just posting like a little bit every once in a while. I just like one day do a bunch of them. Yeah.
Is there like some art that's around right now that you've done for someone that like everyone can see right now? Like
like maybe this background?
Like maybe this background. I was just thinking about,
Yeah, I think I maybe did that at some point.
Yeah, I like that we can send you like, okay, here's a list of all the dumb shit we want or something. And you're like, yes, we can do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite
Obviously,
types.
thinking teal.
Can you make me conversation hearts that say like "Don't kill yourself"? And you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, yes, that is all I've ever wanted to make.
I was like, can there be crazy pills? All right.
Of
Yeah.
course there
can
can.
the color scheme be hot pink, teal, and purple? Can there be a unicorn?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We're always migrating toward like unicorn, which is funny because in our regular lives, Des and I wear black.
Yeah.
But then everything we do is like
It's a pastel goth
Yeah.
podcast thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, feeling it. I love it.
One of my favorite projects.
So tell us about all the stuff the reasons you're interested in suicide, suicidology, suicide prevention, mental health. I know that's a big umbrella, but how did you end up in this field?
Yeah. So I started, I guess, like being in the field from more like writing blogs, which is weird because I don't like identify as like a writer, but that is sort of how I just started talking a bit more about like my story. And I think a lot of it was like me trying to find, like connection or like build community of people. Because I think as a teenager, which is when I struggled, I guess is like the height of my struggle when I had my suicide attempt. I think I felt very like isolated. And so I think through wanting to like talk about that experience, like it took me a bit to get into talking about it. Like I think there was like a time where I was, very quiet about it and nervous and things. And then when I went to college, I sort of was like, fuck it. Like I was like, I'm wearing short sleeves. I'm just gonna talk about it, like whatever, new place, new, whatever. So and I got really good responses to like the articles I'd written. So that was really exciting. And I knew I wanted to be a therapist, especially an art therapist, because of my experiences in it. I really liked art therapy. I think it was really helpful when I like didn't feel like talking and I was like, stop asking me questions. And then they're like, here's art materials. And I was like, cool, I can do that. So I just was like, okay, yeah, I want to do this because this is great. And then I feel like I just sort of, everything I did really, I was like, that was my, end goal. And now I'm here. I, did it. It's interesting though, being kind of like my start in the field, not being as a therapist and not being as like a clinician and being as more of like the strictly lived experience aspect. So
Yeah. I feel like I asked you some really hard questions or said some really challenging things to you when you were very new and such a baby in the field too. And I was like, wow, don't be such a jerk, Jess. But then instead I was like, I'm going to be an asshole, actually. But it's cool. I feel like I have seen like a huge evolution in some of the ways you think about stuff. Jess is drinking wine. She wants everyone.
No, bitch.
Oh, Bailey. Ew, what? Ew. All right. Gross. Wow, things gotten weird. That was the disturbing images, y'all.
Terror. I'm also putting bourbon in it.
Bailey's and bourbon. I don't really know.
I don't know. I'm trying to die today. It's been a lot.
Don't die.
Don't die.
Conversation hearts.
Just like pass out like a little,
Okay. I'm the one that wanted to put the question mark on the don't die.
Oh, I keep forgetting to do that.
But I did that for you with the Christmas card I made you.
I know.
That no one will ever see but you.
So sorry, I was an asshole and when you were very new and a baby in the field.
I don't even remember that because I have a terrible memory, so it's all good.
She was smiling when she said it. That's why you don't remember it.
Oh, okay. I typically.
I think sometimes I'm challenging to people with lived experience at first, which is not really cool. I should probably be nicer to us. But I knew everyone. So I feel like you've had such a huge like evolution in your thinking, and it's been cool because like that's all documented online. Like that's really cool to me because I think so often we're like taught to think about ourselves as like static people, or like that we could never have changes in our opinions or our beliefs or the way we think about ourselves or others. And like your extremely onlineness is as kind of this like dope way that people can follow like what it looks like to have like this evolution in your thinking and like broadening and deepening of your skills around suicide work and therapy and things like that. So this is one of the things that I think is awesome and is probably a little bit hard to like live in the space where you know all of that content in all of its evolutions is out there.
Yeah.
I'm interested in what sort of that is like for you.
Yeah, I think it's something that I have more recently been thinking about because I really haven't written articles in a long time, but I feel like I don't know what made me think of it like recently, maybe like getting my job and stuff and just thinking about, we're always thinking about like our online presence and like everyone always is talking about self-disclosure in class. And I'm like, I mean, it literally takes one Google search. No one else has my name. Like, it's like not that hard. And I'm not going to like try and scrub the internet, like it is what it is.
Yeah.
But it did make me think about like not so much being nervous about like information about my life being out there, but yeah, like how my beliefs or like ways of thinking about things has changed. And so I think I tweeted a couple of weeks ago, or maybe, I don't know, time is irrelevant, but some time ago, I like tweeted like, can you put a thing at the top of an article that like says maybe the author's views have changed? Because like I've been thinking about how I have like articles where I'm like, I don't want people, like for example, if someone's coming to me for therapy and has had like in a lot of my therapist bio things where people find therapists, I like talk about how like, I can't remember exactly how I word it, but something like if you've been failed by, treatment before and stuff, and like that I hope I can provide like, a better experience. And so I'm like, I have some things out there that are a lot less like critical of like the mental health world and the mental health treatment. And so I noticed I felt nervous that like I'm like, hey, well, if they like look me up and like see that and then they're like, what the like what, like that doesn't make any sense. And so I've been thinking about how I don't feel like I want to take things down because I don't feel like that's the like answer for me. I don't believe that they're like I think it's one of those things where also understanding that like dialectic of like it, some of those articles have helped a lot of people, and then I'm sure there's also people I know in a lot of them people were like, this is stupid, like this is not my experience and things like that, which I think is true. Like everyone's like experience is going to be different, and I think if I were writing maybe some of the same articles today, it's not that I necessarily would be like all of that is bullshit, but I would probably have come at it from a more like, here is my experience, here is like, other people's experience, like kind of a more well-rounded view than just go get help, it helps. Like a view.
Yeah, I was thinking about both for both you and Des being in school. It's interesting because like school, like when you're going to school to be a clinician, it is like your indoctrination into that like clinical mindset and thinking and whatever. And I feel like for both of you, like the indoctrination is not working, right? It's almost been when you got more critical, which is not typical of what happens. But I'm interested in what that's like. Like, what is it like to be going through or to go through education and then also being critical, like becoming more critical of those systems? Like, how do you hold those two things?
Yeah, I think I feel very lucky in some ways in that like my program is very critical. I mean, obviously we still are part of the system, but my entire psychopathology class was my teacher just like ripping into the DSM. Like people in my class were like, we don't even understand the DSM yet to be critiquing it. Like we don't even know what this means yet. And so it was really funny because I was like, well, I think because of my like lived experience, I was like, I don't need to be taught the DSM. Like I feel like I get it already. So I was like real ready for the critique. But I know it was interesting because for a lot of people, if they didn't have that experience or didn't study psychology like strictly in undergrad, it was like they were like lost because they were like, we're critiquing this before I even like learned anything about it. So I feel like my school actually helped me be more critical, because in a lot of my classes we were, you know, we basically would like learn the thing and talk about the thing and then talk about like where that thing came from and its implications, and like kind of come at it from a critical lens, which I know is not the case in probably 99% of schools. And I also, and it's not even like a, you know, it's not even like, oh, because it was art therapy education. Like, no, like a lot of art therapy education is probably even worse because there's like there's some weird shit out there. But I feel like I specifically picked my program too because I, you know, by looking at like who the faculty were and, you know, the ways they approached things. I think my glasses are blocking it, but yeah, but it was interesting though, I think, to be, even if my school was like, you know, bringing that critical like aspect, I still had to do internships that were, you know, in the system. And that actually was what was hard for me, because it was like, I was in this bubble at my school where we all were like, yeah, like, fuck this, the system sucks, like all of this stuff. And then I like go into my internship and I'm like, oh, not everyone is this way. And so that actually was kind of where I feel like I experienced most of that like shock of like, right, my school is not, you know, my school's the abnormal compared to like most of the system. And so trying to figure out how to navigate that. I mean, you know, not every single person was great, but like for the most part, you know, I think it actually prepared me well in terms of thinking critically.
I think that's really awesome. And it's so much of it depends on your faculty too. Even within one school, the faculty you have that are teaching each class can make such a huge difference. And I think for most folks that I know that have lived experience, one of the most difficult parts of school is internship. Like it becomes really, really challenging in those spaces.
Yeah.
Especially, I think people like, I can hear your cat. It's so cute.
He is outside of the door, and I also have a white noise machine on. You can still hear him.
This is how we know you're a therapist.
Yeah, because the white noise machine. Yeah.
So, okay, what was I saying?
Internships are hard. They are, yes.
Oh, yeah. And I think especially because so many internships are connected to like some of the most difficult parts of the mental health system. Like so many people do their internships in psych hospitals. Which is like, so if you're in the most acute places, have the newest people, and then you're expecting them to do like the best job, like that. Obviously, if it's going to be a higher level of care,
yeah,
you would think you want people with like higher levels of experience, but not.
Yeah, definitely. And I was glad my program, which I think most programs should be, but my program was 3 years, not 2. A lot of counseling programs at least are 2 years, and so you have one internship, which like I can't even fathom having one internship. Like I was very glad they changed the program like I think a year before I started. And I remember being pissed when I was applying. I was like, I'm kidding, like 3 years. Like I was so mad. And then I started and I was like, wow, yeah, I'm like really glad, and I'm really happy I got 2 different internship experiences that were very different. But I felt like I did intern at a psychiatric hospital for my second internship. So I felt a little bit more prepared, but it's still, yeah, I mean, it still was hard. I think it's interesting. It's also interesting to think about the different hospitals. Like my friend and I both interned at psychiatric hospitals, but 2 different ones. And they were like, could not have been more different. Like just so like mine was in a wealthier area, was like a training hospital, like all this stuff. And like hers was more underfunded. And like, there were just all of these things where it was like showing you basically like these glaring like opposites that can happen in mental health treatment, even though it was the same level of care and like should be getting the same like treatment and things like that. So that was really like eye-opening too.
The whole thing about telling people that they can't self-disclose, I know this is like not on our list at all, so we haven't even covered our list or topics to talk about, but let's talk about self-disclosure a little bit, because I think
Yeah.
that's
Oh, man.
like, wow, the mental health community struggles. And like,
Yeah.
there's important things, right? We don't want self-disclosure to happen for you, for your own
Mhm.
healing only, as opposed to something that's benefiting the person you're working with. But
Mhm.
what were you taught about self-disclosure?
There's a lot of people, there's just so much like fear around it. Like I feel like the thing that I always say is I feel like people think, for some reason they think that like you learn all these counseling skills, but then if you self-disclose, you suddenly forget all of the skills that you learned in counseling. It's like, no,
Mhm.
like self-disclosure is a intervention like any other, thing you would use in a therapy session. And like anything you use in a therapy session, you're thinking about all of the like counseling skills that you've learned. It's not like all of a sudden it goes out the window that I'm like forget, how to like be present and like focus on the client and like all of these things. I think if people just like, which I think is obviously connected to a bigger picture of like discrimination and oppression and shit, of like people just so scared of like all of these things. I don't know. It's just weird. And it's funny because people always ask me and I'm like, I honestly have not really self-disclosed that much in terms of like in sessions. Like I very rarely actually do. It just hasn't come up a lot and hasn't felt super like needed. But it's funny that like I feel like there's this assumption like because I am open about my lived experience, it means that I'm talking about it in sessions. And I'm like, if I felt like that was relevant and like was something that'd be helpful, I would, but it actually hasn't come up a ton because it just hasn't. And that doesn't mean I'm like hiding it or like don't think it's important, but you're just using your discretion. And I think what's hard too is there's actually not a ton of discussion about like public disclosure, which is what I have called it, like in my thesis and stuff, of like what self-disclosure usually means, like in the room with a client, like you're in the moment, in person, or teletherapy, like saying something about yourself. But like it's different if it's something that they can just find online. And like, what is that difference? Like there's not a ton of information out there about it, or I don't feel like therapists should have to just like not be humans on the internet, and stuff. But it's hard because like that's always a weird thing where it's like, I haven't done a lot of self-disclosure in sessions, but obviously I have clients right now who follow me on Instagram and have been for years, and we like talk about it of like, okay, if there's anything I post or share and like that like brings something up for you, like let's talk about it, like making sure that they know, because like obviously that brings in another aspect of like ways they could be affected and the ways the therapeutic relationship could be affected. So I just think it's like just having that conversation of like, hey, I'm a human, I am on the internet, there are things on the internet about me, like if something bothers you or if something you just have a question or whatever, like let's talk about it. So I feel like people just make a big deal about it, and I'm like, it's like any other thing that you would share about yourself. Like I don't want this to be a huge deal.
I think a ton of what happens is that clinicians, because they're taught like, don't self-disclose, your client knows nothing about you. So often they're taught that way. Then they don't know how to do it. And so they fuck it up in a major way when they do. Or when it comes up and like someone is like, Jess, when your therapist was like, you assumed something about your therapist that wasn't true and she kind of let you believe it forever. Like that comes from a place of no one teaching you how to do self-disclosure.
Yeah.
And like, and that's so much worse. It's so much worse not to know how to self-disclose.
Yeah.
Than to like try and avoid it all the time.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's a great example. That situation
that damaged our relationship.
Yeah. And I remember you posting about that because it made me think, because I was like, that's a great example too of how people always think of like, okay, well, only self-disclose if it's in the benefit of the client, if X, Y, Z, but also we have to think about what is the impact if you don't self-disclose this thing, because like it's two sides of the coin. Like it's not only the only impact is if you do self-disclose, there's also really big impacts when you don't self-disclose. I very much have a memory from a therapist who we had been working together for years, and like they were gonna be out and they're like, oh, I'm gonna be on vacation. I was like, oh, like where are you going? And they're like, I can't tell you that. And I like immediately was like, oh, and my brain was like, does she think I'm unsafe? Does she think I'm gonna like do some weird like shit, like, you know, like all of this stuff where I was like, I suddenly had all of these like internalized, like, she doesn't trust me. And I had like never even thought about, you know, I didn't think anything of the question. I wasn't like, where are you going? Like, I want to know where you're going to be. Like, it was like a casual, like, hey, we're working together. Like, I was just curious. Like, and it made me feel like such, like, in that, like, patient role again of like, oh, I'm not, you know, I'm here telling you all these things and you can't even tell me the general vicinity of where you're going. Like, it like made me feel like I did something wrong. And I always think about that was an impact of like, what if she just disclosed it? Like, that wouldn't have happened. And so we have to think too about what happens when we don't tell someone something, especially if there might be an assumption going on, or, you know, it might feel like you were like specifically hiding something if you don't, because obviously you're allowed to have boundaries. I think that's the issue, is people think it means you're not allowed to have boundaries. Like, you don't have to tell clients every, like any relationship, you have boundaries. They just don't have to be so strict that you're like a human who looks like they have like nothing, you know, nothing that's allowed to be seen, you know?
Right. We has a question.
Yeah.
Bing bong, it's on the screen. How would you say the specific therapeutic modalities you use impact the extent of your self-disclosure?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think like I mean, I work from a very like relational approach, relational cultural theory framework. So to me, like, I'm always thinking a lot about the therapeutic relationship. And so a lot of times, even in the beginning, like, not like what is like a serious disclosure or like a, you know, a bigger one. Like, sometimes it's just like that I have a cat, is self-disclosure, or, you know, that, you know, there's like any little thing really about you is a self-disclosure. So things you can like connect on. I think sometimes that's something I'll talk about with clients to just kind of like build that trust, because it does feel weird, you know, in the beginning, if you're just like asking all these questions and they feel like they don't know like anything about you. So I think for me, yeah, just the fact that the therapeutic relationship is something I see as like a really big aspect of like how change takes place, then, you know, I kind of think about that in terms of how I talk to people and how I like discuss things with them and what I share with them. But yeah, I think like there's a natural level of self-disclosure in some things too, because of my like internet presence. So like there are things that I know people already know. Like, if they tell me they found me through my Instagram, it's like, okay, I know that they likely know I have struggled with self-harm, that I'm a suicide attempt survivor. Like, there's all these things that I've posted, so I already go into it knowing they know these things. So sometimes it's, you know, I feel like that also probably lessens why I don't disclose a ton in person, because it's like, I already know, you know, I already know that they know that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how often therapists try and like hide on social media too. Like, lots of clinicians I know are like super locked down, and I'm like, so that seems like you're doing something fucking weird. Like, what are you doing that's so scary for your clients to see? Or things like, my clients can't know my political beliefs or whatever. I'm like, I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why that would be true.
And
like, clients see people out because of those alignments that they have.
Exactly. So many people, like, I got my TikTok that got very popular was literally because I was like talking about being a therapist who is neurodivergent and queer and like fat and like all these things. And people were like, yeah, please sign me up for that. And all the comments were like, I have this like straight cis white dude who just is like, like every 2 seconds. And then I got, the funny thing too is I got comments that were like, so are you saying like ex therapists are bad? Like, people who don't look, and I'm like, I literally nowhere did I say that. Like, people just are like, the fact that I'm just stating my identities, they're like, excuse me? Like, my mom is that type of therapist. And like, she's a good, I'm like, I didn't say that they were good. Like, people get like threatened by the fact that I'm just like, hey, there's another type of therapist you can see that's not this one certain one that everyone, you know, thinks of when you think of a therapist. Like, I often think people probably don't look at me and think of a therapist. I'm like, that's fine. I think we need more of that type of any type of diversity, honestly.
Yeah.
But it's funny. Like, I was really shocked by the amount of people who were like, took that as like an assumption that I was saying that those therapists are bad. And I was like, everyone has a different, like, fit is important in therapy. And so there are plenty of like skinny blonde, white, straight therapists, women therapists specifically, like, who, if that works for you, great. But like for a lot of us, that's not. And so I think it is important to like just show our other identities. Doesn't mean that because of that I'm a good therapist. It just like might make me a better fit for someone. But yeah,
Right.
I got real riled up about it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this also comes from this like belief that neutrality is somehow like less harmful than
Not fucking real.
Yeah, that is fucking useless. Like neutrality is so no one is neutral about things. If they are, it's because they don't know enough about it and they're choosing to be willfully ignorant, which tells you something. Also, on top of that, like, but yeah, I just think it's like this whole idea of like we have to be neutral is a problem, because it also keeps us in a place of not having to learn how, like, there is not very much good education out there about like how do we work with clients we are challenged by. Like, did you take a class on that? Do they have a class on that? Like, probably not, because they're asking us as providers to like hold this neutrality that's not real. And then you get into those situations and you don't know what to do. I feel like we encounter that on the crisis line a ton, because we have to work with everyone, right? You have to work with everyone in the state that calls.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And that's the funny thing too. There's been a lot of conversation about this more recently, or I'm probably forever, but like there's been some recent conversations about like therapists getting to like choose who they work with. And I feel like there's a lot of times like confusion as to what that means. Like people think like, yes, you're not allowed to like turn away people for like, and like anything, like you can't like discriminate against people, but also like you're allowed, if it's not going to be a good fit, like you're allowed to refer. And so people get all up in arms about there was stuff, I think it was Janelle, like talking about like if a client is being racist to you, like, or do you have to continue working with them? And there are a lot of therapists who are like, yeah, like you're not allowed. I'm like, what? Like if you can't provide therapy to them because that is interfering in the relationship, then you're not able to provide care for that, then that's a completely valid reason to, refer. And so I think people get really caught up in like, oh, it's a helping profession. Like you have to help every single person. And it's like, there's so many therapists. You give a referral to a therapist who can work with them. Like,
so I think that I have some challenges with that too, though, because I think that there's a justice principle about everyone being able to access care. So, for example, if somebody calls our hotline, there's not a referral to someone else.
That's different. Yeah.
Right. Or if you're working in a community mental health center, you might be the last place that person can go to. Yeah. They might have to wait 8 weeks for another person. So there's a health justice component of this too, that might ask you to work with people who are really different from you, and who don't honor your dignity as a human. And I think there's a place where we have to do that if we're choosing to work in those settings where we're supposed to be a universal access point.
Yeah, that's true. Different. I think it depends. I think if you're in if that's the type of place you're working in, then yes. But there's definitely like a lot of like private practices where like you don't have to be, you know what I mean? Like you're not like this last chance of treatment, and there is probably another therapist works better. If you're the only chance at treatment for that person, then obviously, like that's a different situation. You can't just be like, nope, sorry.
I think it's hard because in my work, I am exposed to the people that are so failed by the mental health system because they have been bounced by every therapist. So it gets really tricky for me when you get into that space of like, do you get to choose your clients? Like, yeah, so you're supposed to refer, but what does it actually mean to refer? And then when does that person actually get connected to care? Because how many therapists get to refer them before?
Yeah.
Someone I think has to work with them, right? I think there's big challenges to all of that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think because the system that we live in, I don't think there's a perfect answer, because there's we have this conversation too about like therapists and like how, pro bono or sliding scale and all this stuff. And it sucks because it's like, obviously I want to be able to provide care and like do my part, but also I can't fix this system and I have loans to pay. And I, you know, like to get to this. So a lot of times I feel like it's interesting being someone who's been in therapy and been on the side of like, I literally can't see this therapist who probably would be great for me because I can't afford it, you know, and, you know, also being now a therapist who sets fees and stuff. And then that like disconnect of like, I hate how much it does get put sometimes on therapists too. Like I do think we have a responsibility. I don't think who knows, maybe I'll feel differently in the future, but as of right now, I hate how many therapists are strictly only private pay. I'm like, come on, like give a little bit, like fine if you want to have a higher percentage of private pay, but I feel like I could never do totally just private pay. Like that wouldn't sit right with my politics. But you know, I think it's hard then because they're like, oh, well, it shouldn't be on us. And I'm like, well, yeah, it shouldn't be, but that doesn't mean that we're just like absolved from any responsibility because the system sucks. Like it both sucks and there are some ways that we can, you know, help in some ways.
Yeah, I think it's all of this stuff is really complicated, and mostly because like we live in a capitalist system. That,
yeah.
Wait, what?
Oh,
what was
right. Yeah. Oh, we're talking about capitalism. Surprise.
Yeah. Good old capitalism.
The subtext of suicide and stuff.
Speaking of terror,
ruins mental health and causes people to kill themselves. Okay, so we've gotten to a little bit of our talking points from the beginning. I'm wondering if it's beef time. It feels like beef time.
Beef time. I mean, capitalism is a great segue into beef. So
yeah, capitalism is a great segue into beef. Oh God, we had to do this beef.
Yeah, love it. Just take that beef.
I just love that she looks so much like Carol. Oh wait, I gotta change the background, but it can't be the blinking one because we'll get kicked off of Facebook. Don't want that.
Yeah, just a plain background. Okay.
I can make it blink on my own.
Ooh, slow. Slow. Don't fuck this up, Des. I'm real nervous about it. Okay, so my beef for today is going to be about like the moo. My beef for today is going to be about 988 again. Everybody has secret meetings that works for the government or is like a big person in like crisis or suicidology. They all have these like shitty, like closed door, like the kind of meetings that are in every, like that run all governments and stuff, that are just like people with power, like sharing power with each other, like passing balls back and forth and never letting the right people in the room. And like the more you start to know people, the more you find out about these stupid, shitty closed door meetings that people have to make decisions about people's fucking lives without inviting people whose lives are being fucked with. Anyway, I don't like it. Y'all should stop. It's all the same people all the time. And like, we don't need to replicate all of the things that don't work over and over and over again until everyone's dead. Come on. Do better. Anyway, my beef was sad today. Yeah, do better. Just like
fucking do better.
Yeah. There's public comment available on 988, and you should all comment on it. Right now, they're talking about geolocation still. It's a really fucking big deal. This is like allowing the hotlines to track your phone. And I can tell you, as someone who works on a lifeline at a lifeline center, I don't want to do that. I don't want Lifeline to ask us to do that, because then I have to start making some other decisions about my career, and it probably means leaving. So don't do that to me. Make 988 better. We already have 911. People can choose it. Who else has a beef?
There's so many. Hold on. I'm putting the link in for a 988 comment. Beef. Wow. So if I get through this without crying, it'll be great, but I'm maybe drunk. So maybe I won't cry.
Tears are welcome.
No, I know, but then I start crying and I don't stop, and it's like a whole thing.
Yeah.
So I found out in a 24-hour period the 2 people who I interviewed for Live Through This died.
2?
Yeah.
2. Yeah, one died on Christmas and one died in November, but the way that I found out about it was very shady, and actually his ex-fiance is texting me right now after me trying to contact her for a very long time. It took me 2 weeks to confirm that he did die because of the shady ways that it came through. But what I have learned, 6 people from the project have died now. They've all been in their late 40s, early 50s. 4 of them were advocates. That means 4 of them had a lot of fucking resources. They had a whole community of people who know what it's like, a whole community of phone numbers, the lifeline, the crisis text line, therapists, meds, hospitalizations, all the good things that they tell us to seek out, but they're still fucking dead. So what does that mean? Like, if that's not an indictment of suicide prevention, of the mental health field, of any of it, then I don't know what is. And I'm so fucking angry. I'm so mad. Like, I don't even know. I don't even know. I just 2020 has been nothing but death. But I'm thinking about what it means to have lost these people and what this pattern is. This is such a fucked up pattern.
Yeah.
It's such a fucked up pattern because it's all people who did everything they were told.
Right.
And then they just fucking couldn't stay anymore. What is
I think
that?
it's such a clear, so I don't think this is not the solution to all of it, but it's just such a clear blinking arrow pointing to the fact that it's not just something that's pathology inside us, because having all the resources that exist doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
And we've been telling people this for so long. So when do you listen to us? At what point do enough of us die that you listen to us and make the world fucking livable?
I don't know.
This is a real sad beef corner today. What do you have, Alyse?
My beef is so stupid. My beef is just diet culture, New Year's resolution shit. Which
that shit.
Honestly, though,
people.
I was gonna say it is related, because obviously too, if as you guys, I loved the the student stuff you guys do on this, but that fat phobia and weight stigma and shit is a factor in itself. So I just I know New Year's stuff brings that up and everything, but I don't know, I guess I'm so in my bubble, honestly, of people who aren't, for the most part, most people are not fat phobic on my social media and stuff, or at least I try and get rid of that. So I was on TikTok and your For You page, whatever, and I was like, what the fuck? I got 5 different weight loss transformation journeys and ads for Mio water drops because there's 0 calories, and I was like, what is happening right now? And I'm just not interested, not interested, not interested, and then I'm still getting them, and I'm like, is there there should be a exit out of all diet culture shit. But it also just made me sad thinking about just how I am in a place where I can just be this is fucking stupid and X out of it. But how many people, especially on TikTok, who are very impressionable teenagers who are probably already struggling with their bodies and stuff, and to log on and see, you know what I mean, and see that, and I'm just ugh.
Yeah.
That was my
if I see another ad for fucking Noom,
oh god,
shit.
the worst.
That shit.
You're
Wow,
it's not a diet. Just watch what you eat. What?
Right.
It's a literal diet.
But they're definitely disordered eating behaviors.
Yeah.
It's not a diet.
It's not a diet. It's a lifestyle change.
Yeah, right. You can let this one thing consume every part of your life.
Because it's like their wellness culture is just so, I hate it because it literally is just like diet culture and like all of this, like, you are not good enough as a person packaged up as like, take care of you by taking care of your wellness, like attend to your I'm like, how is this attending to your wellness? Like, how is here are all the things you have to change about yourself, like attending to your wellness. I don't understand. But yeah,
I'm trying to like have New Year's same me, like,
Right.
yeah, like I'm gonna show up just like this.
I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna get fatter. How about that?
Fuck you.
Fuck you. I'm just gonna get
Take a
fatter.
picture every day of me eating my treats. So yeah, I think I wanted to connect a beef to one of the things that we were just talking about, and then we can move on, which is, so one of the people from the project who died was someone whose struggle was showing up in ways that were really, really difficult for people to be around. And I think it's folks like that person who the systems miss in such a big way, who get passed from service to service. They get banned from crisis lines. They get banned from accessing resources. They get banned from hospitals. And I know, because we work with folks like this, if I gave everyone on my line the choice of whether or not to work with them, no one would answer the phone. No one would help them. And like, so that's the space where it gets complicated about choosing who you work with.
Right.
And I like, and like, what does it feel like to be someone whose stuff shows up in that way, whose like struggle shows up in that way, where even the people who are like the most whatever, like liberal, accepting, whatever, are not able to support you like that. There's something there that we got to do something about. And that's for us, I think, that are on this like left side, peer support side, lived experience side, to figure out is how we support those folks.
Yeah.
People with BPD are definitely.
That's another beef. I forgot about that. I forgot about my whole rant about BPD and therapists. God, it makes me so angry. I'm like, everyone, just so frustrating. People just like that. I mean, and that's where it's like, sometimes I'm like shocked at like the education. I'm like, you just don't even know what you're talking about. Like, you literally just don't even know what you're talking about. Like, you're just like going off this idea of like what you think BPD is and how you think those people like show up. And and then people in the comments will always be like, well, you know, I had a BPD client who XYZ terrible thing. I'm like, okay, like, so why is that one client who has BPD, you're now just going to attribute that to like their BPD? You know what I mean? I'm like, someone can just like do terrible shit. Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't mean that it's like, oh, well, that means all people with BPD are going to do XYZ and you need to do, you know, all these things to like protect whatever. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm not just going to attribute, like, I might have a client who does something shitty and I'm not going to be like, oh, well, that was because they're depression. And now all people with depression are going to do that to me. Like, you know better than that. Like, are we not taught better than that? Like, more critically than that?
What about the borderline?
What about the favorite question? What about borderlines?
It's like, as a provider,
I can't wait to find out what I'm going to get, like what I'm going to learn about the borderlines in my program. Cannot wait.
Well, and the sad thing is, it's like literally what people with BPD likely need is a therapist who is there for them and is going to do the repairing attachment work and is going to like not do all of the things that are likely reasons contributing to the BPD. Like, literally, it's like at its core is like, if you have relationship trauma and stuff, like, and so you're just perpetuating that by being a therapist who is perpetuating more of that trauma onto them. Like,
right. And like, when did you learn that every client you work with has to be easy for you to work with?
Yeah.
And like, it's not their job to understand BPD. It's fucking your job to understand BPD as the provider. Like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're supposed to teach them about it and help them.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that shows like how, you know, there's just such a lack of like understanding around it, or it's either like a complete just lack of understanding around it, or a complete like misinformation about it. Like I think that is a huge part of it too. It's just like there's so much stuff where people will say stuff and I'm like, that doesn't even make any sense. Like who told you that? Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like I'm like, where are you even getting that information from? Like,
Yeah.
and it's often like, you know, if you're just reading this list of the DSM and like reading, you know, horror stories, like I'm like, yeah, you can find anything to confirm whatever feelings you have about, you know, whatever. Yeah, it just makes me so mad.
Have we all had a BPD diagnosis? I feel like if you're like a white suicidal woman.
If I did, no one ever said so, but like I don't see how I couldn't have had that written down on me at some point.
Maybe because you got bipolar instead. If you get bipolar first, you might avoid the BPD. But like it's pretty hard to be like a white suicide attempt survivor woman and not like get a BPD.
I had
at some point.
I had a gynecologist at one point. I like forget why I was getting my records. I think I was changing gynecologist. And then on my record it said I had bipolar disorder. And I was like, literally no one has ever diagnosed me with that. I don't know why my gynecologist said that. I was like, what is wrong with you? Like I think I was like, maybe I was like, I get mood swings with I have PMDD actually, so I have mood swings around my period and stuff. But I was like, got really mad at her, and she's like, "Oh, it must have just been a mistake." And I was like, "A mistake? You just accidentally were like, whoops, bipolar disorder." Like what?
Oh my God! I had one of the obstetricians, like when I would go in when I was pregnant and get, you know, like the big scans, like when I went and got Theo's anatomy scan. He kept like harping about this bipolar disorder. And I was like, I don't know, my psychiatrist and therapist for the past several years think it's like not legit. Like, so can we not talk about this? Because you're here to care for my baby, not like I have this covered. He was obsessed. It was fucking obnoxious.
So annoying. Yeah. Also, I one more beef I forgot is I have been getting so mad about, like, I got diagnosed with ADHD this past year. And I was like, how did I go through the mental health system for like 10 years and not one person ever, like literally ever brought it up? And then I like learned about it through school and like through my own like looking up stuff. And I was like, and I went to a psychiatrist once out here in Chicago, and I remember leaving because I was so mad at her because I don't think the way she handled it was correctly, because they just have a lot of times terrible, like, you know, terrible ways of like talking to the person. But they like told me, I like went and, you know, I'm telling them like, okay, here are all the things I've been diagnosed with. Here's medication I take. I'm just looking for med management, whatever. And they were like, I actually don't think you have any of that. I think you just have really complex ADHD. And I was so mad because I was like, you've met me for 15 minutes. I was so pissed. And then I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And then I like talked to the psychiatrist I was like already seeing. And then we realized that I actually do have ADHD. And so she was right. But I'm still mad about the way she went about it. But it was interesting to think about like how ADHD can present as like so many, you know what I mean, like so many other diagnoses, and like also just it shows how diagnoses also are sort of a random guessing game in a way.
Yeah. Like 150 people in my life have that exact same story right now. All women.
Yes. Also, I have a theory, and it doesn't really have any basis, but I'm very curious if anyone knows of research about ADHD in fat women specifically, because
people don't like to give that diagnosis to fat people.
Because I'm real curious in the terms of like, because like the hyperactive, like clearly I'm too lazy to be hyper. Like,
uppers?
Yeah.
That too, but yeah.
Or people with a substance use history, which is really common for people with ADHD, right? Because they use it to manage their fucking ADHD. There's a lot of things there. We've gone a very long time with the beefs. We have not addressed any of our points. We haven't talked about art really at all. We've talked about therapy. We have not talked about NSSI. do we want to try and take a self-injury 5 minutes?
Do it. I mean, we
Sure.
can go over a little bit. That's
I'm down to
fine.
go over. Yeah.
I'm in no rush.
Okay. Let's talk about
Yes.
cutting ourselves.
Yes, let's talk about it.
Cutting and crying.
We need a GIF for that in the background, just like
We
flashing.
need a cutting and crying GIF. I feel like we talk about cutting and crying a lot.
Yeah, with Sarah McLachlan on.
And Tori.
And Tori, I know.
Right.
As always wants
For me, it was Victorian Dishwalla. Okay.
I don't actually remember anything about the music. I just feel like Sarah McLachlan, that like song that they use with the dogs and stuff is
In the arms.
yeah. That's just what I picture when I picture myself, you know.
Totally destroyed Sarah McLachlan for me.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about you have like visible scars that I bet makes it really difficult to like hide your history, which I think is sort of a different perspective than what I have on it because mine are not super visible like that. And NSSI and suicide are all tangled up in people's minds in dumb ways that don't make any sense. So where do we go? Where do we want to start with NSSI? NSSI is non-suicidal self-injury. I want to stop using that abbreviation without defining it. Okay.
Yeah. I think that has been one of the most interesting things about like becoming a therapist. Because I like knew it wasn't just going to be like completely easy peasy. No one was going to have an issue with it. But again, that thing of like my school kind of being a bubble because like my school really did not have an issue with it. Like, no, we like would talk about it if I tried to get a little guidance on it, but it also was hard in that like, it was hard to have like a mentor around it because literally no one had that experience. And so it was really hard because, I had professors who have lived experience, but just not in that like exact way, in like a visible way. And so, it was hard. I remember trying like look it up, look at like therapists, I'm like, cause I just want someone to tell me, I just want examples of how people handle it. You know what I mean? Cause like, obviously, I think there is this assumption of like, I know it could be triggering because I know, like, I obviously have dealt with it. So like, I know that scars can be triggering for people who like deal with self-harm. And so trying to find this balance between like, okay, yeah, but also anything could be triggering. Like me being fat could trigger someone who comes in and has eating disorder. So like, and I can't hide that. So it's like, how do we get to like pick and choose the things that we're like, oh, well, if you can hide it, like you should. And it's like, well, maybe I should have been given the chance to like see what comes up and talk to the client about it. Cause I think sometimes too, it's like, I can tell if they're staring at, like, it's not like they would just have no idea. Like I can tell if they're like, looking at him or like seeing him, and I could use my counseling skills to like have a conversation about like what's coming up for them around it. But I feel like I was never really given that chance to do so, honestly, because I had to wear long sleeves at both my internships. And now I do teletherapy, and so they can't even see them. So it's like, it's really interesting to think too about like what teletherapy does. And actually my therapist was a very powerful example of self-disclosure. As I was telling her, as I was like, it was a newer therapist, and I was telling her about how I was feeling really like anxious, like looking for jobs and like not knowing what to do. And teletherapy added an extra level of like, well, they're gonna have no idea unless I say it. And she was like, can I self-disclose something? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, I have visible scars too. And I was like, you do? Like I was like so like, holy shit, like tell me what you did. And that is a really cool thing I think about being a therapist in therapy, is it's like part supervision and part therapy. Like I can kind of choose how I want to use it. But yeah, it was hard. There just wasn't a ton of stuff out there. I know Sarah Victor did some research with like psychologists and stuff, but I'm also curious about how that's different. I think I often think about how I have a bunch of things against me almost. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like I'm like this super professional looking person and then I just happen to have scars. It's like, all right, I come in with my colored hair and my like big ass earrings, like all this stuff. And I'm like, whoops.
Yeah, it's like nobody's surprised, I think, when I show up and I'm like, I have lived experience. They're like, yeah, you do.
It's for me, it's like they're surprised at the
Shocking. Barely a sad tattoo. Does. Look at how good mine looks on yours. Yeah.
It looks great. It looks really great next to my cultural appropriation tattoo too.
Yeah.
I know.
We gotta go get our don't die tattoos.
I know. We were supposed to get matching tattoos.
We'll get them. Mine's gonna have a question.
Pandemic for us not getting tattoos. Fuck the hundreds of thousands of people who died.
Oh man. Okay, so do you want to talk about art and advocacy also very quickly?
1.5 minutes.
In 1.5 minutes, any thoughts you have on art and advocacy?
She looks frozen.
Or you're frozen.
Yeah, it's frozen for a second.
You're back. Great.
She was like
1 minute on art and advocacy, and then we'll wrap up, and it'll be great.
Cool.
JK, do whatever you think. Like, just talk.
Yeah, talk. It doesn't have to be 1 minute times.
About what? About advocacy?
Art and advocacy.
Oh, art and advocacy. Yes.
Super narrow topic, really simple to cover in a couple.
Yeah, super simple broad topic. I feel like I don't know. I guess I feel like for me, like I feel like most of my art is advocacy in some ways because I'm just always talking about. We always have some sort of like mental health, social justice, like suicide prevention component. There's definitely some that I think are more like actively like advocacy like or like the ones that are more like informational, I guess. Like the things I made this year for suicide prevention month, fun times. But yeah, I think I feel like all of my things just kind of intertwine. Like I always have all of those like hats on. Like it's not like I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make this post about my clinical experience and then this one about my lived experience. Like it's not like all separate. I think for a while I always was like felt like they had to be like these separate things of me, and then realizing like they're not even separate in my head, so I can't really separate them out, and I don't really want to because I think that is what makes them, what they are. But yeah, it's a fun time. I like doing it. I like making. I'm getting more and more into like the informational, like things that like therapists and researchers and things like can use. I think people who are like, I love when people who are doing other types of work are like, this was perfect for my presentation. I'm like, oh, sweet. Like go for it. Like, but also trying to get better at figuring out ways to like, be like, oh, right. I probably should be putting things in my shop for that. It's always weird trying to figure that out too though. But
I think it's like there's this cool epistemic justice like thing that you can do with art about making complex things accessible to people who normally are denied access to that information.
Yeah.
And like to me that's like one of the most critical things for those of us who are working in the like knowledge production side of this field to do. And having people who can do that is like super valuable and important. So yeah, I always really appreciate your work in that area.
Yeah, I like that. I haven't thought of it in that way, but I feel like that is kind of what I do. I like to take, because I get confused. Like I'm like, I have a master's degree and I'll be reading a paper. I'm like, what? Like, what is this even saying? Like I get so lost. And I like being able to, like take different concepts and be like, all right, well, what is this actually trying to say? And then make it look pretty because no one wants to look at it if it's not cool looking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I make a lot of things that are not cool looking.
Well, I'm around.
I have like some abilities on the content side, but not the pretty side. The pretty side is you two are much more. Yeah.
Please fix my slides. And I was like, rainbow.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't even want to have anything visual. Can I just talk? No, that's not accessible. I'm like, fuck. Okay. I'm gonna do it better. Yeah, but so yeah, I appreciate like both of you are great at that. But I think specifically that like ability to make things like things that are like I don't know, people think of it like as like dark and twisty. You make them like cute too, which is
Yeah.
like that's like I mean that's like all of our art stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any last things you want to say before we're done?
I don't think so. This was great. This was fun.
Yeah, it was lots of fun.
That's really all you have. I don't believe it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I did a terrible job, y'all. I'll just see myself out.
It was really bad. Yeah. Can we see
fun.
the Therapeutic before you go?
Oh yeah,
Like,
can
is
they
that
come in?
Is that an option?
Can you what?
We want to see your therapist before.
Oh, yeah.
Can we see your pussy, please?
I was like, no.
She's been chasing Boo away this whole time.
Oh my God. He's in a box. It's really cute.
Oh.
He's in a ramen box that we just cleaned out today. And he claimed it as his own.
Oh, the therapist.
Oh, he's so cute. I wasn't expecting to like walked out and he was like, meow. I'm sorry for disturbing you.
Oh, this was great. Thank you.
Yeah.
With a black cat.
I love my black cat.
Very witchy.
No.
Good job.
Sit with him.
Yeah, pretty good. Oh, you're gonna sit with him in the box. I like
I
that.
am.
Yeah, I love it.
Speaking of pussies and more, our next episode on 2 weeks from now. Of course, my Google Doc won't open.
Yeah.
What day is it? 2 weeks from now. What day is it? Come on, the internet, help me here.
So like my undone bed over here.
January 12th.
I love a good undone bed. On the 12th, we're having Dr. Carrie Journey, who is a veterinarian,
Yeah,
with us to talk about veterinarian suicide. Yeah, so maybe we can just bring the therapist back and have you on, but not you.
Randomly through part of it, Alyse just comes out with a cat.
What you doing, boo?
Boo, you're so cute.
Chillin', ho. What you doing?
I love it. With a little chin.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, he's a girl boy after my own heart, whatever gender he is. He's sleeping in his good ass ramen box.
Cats don't need gender.
They don't.
They're beyond gender.
They need ramen, like the rest of us.
They need boxes.
He does.
Or ramen.
And ramen.
I'm so shocked that he's just chilling like that. I mean, he's a pretty chill cat, but like, he's just like, yep, this is fine. I literally just picked him up. Yeah, we're very similar. We're both very needy and like to have all the attention. So it works well. We give each other the, we fill each other's needs.
It's a borderline.
You're a house panther?
What?
You're a house panther? Wait, are you older than your partner? Maybe you can be the house cougar and Boo can be the house panther.
Yeah, he is kind of like a panther.
I was wondering if he's a borderline.
Yes, 100%.
Probably.
I'm about to take him to the vet soon and be like, does he need medication? He's just like meowing 24/7. That's okay though.
All right. This was awesome. Thank you.
Yes, this was really good. Fuck 2020.
Yes.
Last one of 2020.
Yeah.
We did this for a year, and the year was 2020.
Oh.
A whole year of this bullshit.
Yeah.
It was 5 years.
The longest year.
Yes.
The longest. The worst year. The worst one.
But if you're good enough at dissociating, you can block the whole thing out of existence.
Woo!
Skills.
Looking forward to it.
Very good.
Use your coping skills. All right. Have a good New Year, everyone, if you're doing any New Year things. And we'll see you in 2021.
Sounds good. Bye. Bye.
Bye. End broadcast button now. Bye.